Today, I'm interviewing Marek.
We closed last year with approximately $30 million in sales.
4 years ago, he got fired from his job as a marine engineer in Norway, and today he's running a huge mid-8-figure health and wellness brand, selling a product that almost nobody has ever heard of.
The only drop shipping is like content and marketing arbitrage. It's not product arbitrage, because once you find a product that works, anybody can swipe it.
And what makes this interview so unique is that I've known Marek for years, and I've been working with him for the past 7 months as his external CRO and funnel partner. So I got a first-hand insight into how he runs and operates this business.
I always think, how can I make worse ads and still maintain profitability and still keep scaling?
Marek, thank you so much for doing this. I'm super excited for this episode because I've known you for a long time. I mean, we've doing some events and masterminds together and now also work together on your brand. So super happy that I got you in front of the camera now. I mean, also had the pleasure at you jumping on stage at my mastermind, which was really, really exciting to hear you talk about how you built the business. So before we really dive into this interview, for the people who don't know you yet, please just give a quick overview of who you are and what you're building right now.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Carl, for the invite. My name is Marek. I'm from Poland. I'm 31 years old. In e-com for approximately 4 years. I've never had any brands beyond the one that I'm currently running, so no real dropshipping background. First product that I run is this one, and excited to share. We closed last year with approximately $30 million in sales. So as I mentioned, around 4 years in business, primarily US market, D2C, Shopify, Amazon. Happy to share any insights. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, that's even more exciting because most of the people that I have, they have like 10 businesses before dropshipping for years. And with you, it seems like you just went in, you took one product and you made it super successful. What did you do before starting with e-commerce?
So I graduated from uni. I was a marine engineer. I lived in Norway, got fired, had multiple jobs there, and I stumbled upon e-com. And that was kind of my way out of 9 to 5, out of living abroad. Poland is obviously in a different place than it used to be like even 5 years ago, so it's a whole different country right now. But that was something that I saw as an opportunity to build something on my own and to learn actual skills and not being replaceable.
Yeah, very cool. And from your perspective, especially given that this is like the first product you touched and you made it so successful, what do you think is the main reason that you were able to make it work?
It's a very niche product, as you know, and I think that you can make pretty much anything work. So the way I approached it when I found this product, when I stumbled upon it, is I wanted to find something that people naturally want to watch and consume as content. And products that are very demo heavy, products that are easy to market and that are very watchable, and the videos naturally are easy to make viral, are really good carriers for a decent product. So the second criteria was obviously the product selection, but I didn't approach it from like a problem solution framework, but more from like a content framework, and I was looking for proof where this content has already done really well across like multiple different platforms, featuring a variation or different kinds of this product.
Yeah, very cool. I think that's also just for the podcast, like the way that I like to set it up is, first of all, again, without obviously giving the product and the brand away, just diving a bit deeper into like how you selected the niche and how you kind of went about the first steps of like building the brand, and also like you as a business operator, like how did you start building the team? And then afterwards, I think we can spend most of the time on like marketing, funnels, backend, and everything, because that's the most exciting stuff of like that enabled you to actually scale it. So for the beginning, you already mentioned that you wanted to find something that's like potentially very viral and very good on content. Was there some form of like market research? Was it that you just got introduced to ecom and then you stumbled upon this product? Maybe take us back into the early days of the finding the product and understanding that you're basically sitting on a huge potential there.
So I just went to like one of the basic research tools. I think it was, I don't remember the name of the tool anymore. It was a course that I purchased for like $500, I believe, from Dan Vass. He specified one tool there, and I was trying to figure out what kind of ads or what kind of videos, what metrics do they need to have, like likes to views proportion, like share to view, that indicates that people actually like it. A lot of the times the numbers are inflated, but the genuine human reactions are like the best indicator of like viral content. Played around, tweaked around, and I stumbled upon the product. I was very surprised to see that it works, and I think that there are many untapped niches, products, concepts that can be productized still that are not as competitive as like your regular go-to supplements.
Yeah, very interesting. And I've heard a lot of variations of what you just said. So for example, we've had this crazy product 4 years ago now, which was Nomisk, right? This like period pain relief. And I sat down with the founder back then in Miami and we talked about the product, and he was also like 10 million first year and like crazy numbers. And I was like, how did you find this product? And he basically said the same, like almost the same thing of looking at the market, trying to understand human psychology, what works, and also what is the potential for virality. Nowadays, I see so many people, especially the younger dropshippers, spam test products. And they have this approach of like trying to do the easiest almost way to just quickly find products, spam test all of them. Maybe one works, they can scale it a bit. Whereas with you, it seems like you put a lot of more effort into researching and understanding like what is a really, really good niche.
Yeah.
What do you think from your perspective made that happen?
It's just approaching it from first principles. So if we're advertising on social media, right, it's all about the content, and everybody is just in a struggle right now for everybody's competing for attention. So you're in a better position when you have something that people would naturally watch anyway. So organic content is like a great indicator of like what people are posting, what people are sharing, what goes viral, maybe some problems, maybe there are certain patterns among like, content that goes like is evergreen, goes viral. And then looking back at I lost my thought. So going back to the content. So from first principles, what makes it works? Why does it work? Could you bring up what you
For sure. So basically, I was just saying that I've heard the same idea from other founders phrased in a different way of like putting a lot of effort into market research. Nowadays, you see so many like kids and dropshippers just spam testing products. So that's why I was asking for, why do you think this approach of like more market research and understanding organic, I would say, reception of a market outperforms the approach of spam testing?
Yes, because it's also not about the product. Like if you're just spam testing products, you're really not learning what makes it work. You're just attributing all that weight to the product. The product is secondary, because again, like your main problem once you have something that works will be how to get people to watch content. Like a lot of times right now, VSL ads, long form ads that are, a lot of times successful is just a struggle for attention. How do you keep the person viewing? Like you push the product introduction like 3, 4, 5 minutes into the ad, and it's just so much easier when you have something that people naturally watch. And when you come from the dropshipping mindset, you again attribute too much weight to the product itself. And I think that you can make a lot of things work if you use just a different framework. If you approach it like, what kind of video do I produce so people watch it? So then I can insert a product that then makes it inevitable for the person to purchase. Because the more time a person spends watching your ad, the more likely they are to purchase, to take action, to for you to, spark that impulse for them to purchase it, or plant an idea about a problem, about a solution, or about a way that they haven't seen before to resolve a problem. So again, drop shipping, I think right now is seriously flawed in a way that it approaches product testing. It should be content testing, framework testing, with a product on top of it rather than just swiping products. The market is already too competitive. Maybe some niche European markets are still not, but I highly doubt that this could still work in the US. It's like a hyper competitive market, and the only like drop shipping is like content and marketing arbitrage. It's not product arbitrage, because
Yeah.
once you find a product that works, anybody can swipe it. So once you discovered it, you lost the arbitrage.
Yeah, very interesting. And there were so many golden nuggets in what you already said. So first that I want to mark out for the audience is first principle thinking, being able to break down everything on a first principle basis. And then secondly, really obsessing with human psychology, right? So you said you want to have a learning process, you want to be able to iterate, and you want to focus on the customer. And then almost the product comes secondly,
Exactly.
right? Of like being able to understand how to market to the consumer first, and then secondly finding the form of like product or offer to work with that. One thing that I also wanted to ask you, because I mean, you worked in Norway, you're living in Poland. What made you go into the US?
It's the biggest market. The opportunity is the biggest there. So just for comparison, US market is bigger than all of the EU markets combined. Again, first principles. You don't have the localization problem. Every single EU country, as you know, if you're not from Europe, you probably could assume that, every single country has similar culture. It's just a different language, but couldn't be more wrong. Like for example, Germans way different than Polish, way different than French, way different than Italians or people in the UK. Then comes on top of that like a very significant operational load that you have to carry if you run multiple markets simultaneously. So if you're doing Europe, I would just group it by language, culture, and stick to that. But in my opinion, US market is the best. Single payment processing, single language, single culture, the biggest market in the world. It's the most competitive, but that's also an advantage because once you learn it, once you establish your processes, then you can scale, and whatever you're going to scale, you'll naturally crack the markets way easier. But there's also a way and a place for EU markets. They're still behind the US, maybe not as much, when it comes to Germany or Netherlands. These are the most saturated ones. But there's a bunch of markets where you can replicate frameworks from US without knowing what works. No. Make money, learn the basics, learn the ropes, and then maybe compete in the US market. But the game is very much different there. And you have to think more like an operator, not just like a marketer, to be able to compete.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect transition into the next section of understanding you as an operator. And a lot of the characteristics and a lot of the things that I've noticed about you in the time we've known each other are similar across other successful e-commerce operators that I've talked to, that I've known, or that I call my friends, right? So also interesting, I interviewed Harvey on Friday, right? So there's a lot of things where it's almost like talking to the same person. I think with you, it's you're still a bit like unique in the sense that you're super direct, and I think that also comes a bit from the Eastern European culture, right? You're super direct, you push hard, and one of the things, I mean, we had this in one of our calls like a couple of weeks ago, is that you really like to try to push people, right? So maybe take me into that mindset a bit of yours as an operator. What do you think are the main traits that make you successful as an e-commerce operator?
Okay, I'll start with the people, and thanks for the nice words. I think it comes just from like my personal kind of naive way of approaching people, because I think that everybody has potential and everybody deserves better. So when I spot the potential, I push people hard, so I don't push everybody, and these people usually don't last long in my company as well. That don't display signs of potential, or they just don't want to succeed. Um, it's better to have an empty seat than a seat filled with the wrong person, I would say. And the second part of the question, if you could.
Sure. So I was basically asking for what do you think makes an e-commerce operator successful, and then that also goes into like how you like to push people.
Okay. I think knowing every aspect of the business is definitely useful. Like, at least for the first year or two, I wore many hats. I've done a lot of things. I answered the customer support tickets myself, at least until we've done a couple million in revenue. I was still customer support. So basically, the hires that I've made were always a response to like a burning problem. So I at least know what better than me looks like. I think that that made it easier, and I believe that for a lot of people, at least it worked for me. I know there are founders who have different beliefs around it, but I think it definitely helps to be in like different areas of your business, understand it, and always stay in touch with these areas, just so I understand the trajectory of them, and how they're going, and pushing people. Again, this is just spotting potential, spotting patterns, spotting successful patterns, and isolating them and focusing on them. So just helping people grow uh, doesn't always work. Sometimes people think they want to grow, but then
Yeah.
they just crumble under the pressure. So for a hyper growth e-commerce company, because it's very easy to grow, it's very easy to grow quickly. You end up having a different business like every 3 months, especially in our case when we're growing 5x year over year. I find myself reevaluating the team like pretty much on a month-to-month basis, and a lot of times I come to realization that I don't always like, which is that the company might have outgrown certain people that have been loyal, that have been with the company, but they're no longer going to be the growth drivers as they were during the previous stages of the company. So sometimes this is like this might be a painful realization when you're already bonded with people, and you've seen them in real life. You've shared ups and downs. So that's the difficult part, definitely, of pushing people, because sometimes you have to also realize when you have to stop pushing them.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting. I almost have the same approach, and I've seen it from other people like Elon Musk, where it's like they are such a big company, but they're still super involved. And it's also they jump in and they do a lot of stuff themselves to understand it and then delegate it again. One thing that I found really fascinating is that you jumped into e-commerce, you built a big business, and then you basically just kind of gave your brother the blueprint, and now he's also running a successful e-commerce business, which is super cool. What were the main things that you told your brother in the early days that enabled him to now also like almost follow your footsteps and build a successful e-commerce business?
Yeah, it all boils down to just stick to it and don't look for shiny objects, because the blueprints are there. He just needed me to kind of like crystallize some of the learnings, and maybe just to slightly course correct and point him. He's also a smart guy. He figured most of his stuff just by himself, and being in communities, buying courses, and like self-educating, because there's a lot of good material out there, and there's a lot of good operators sharing their knowledge. But thing the main thing is that a lot of people looking at the e-commerce success stories, over they have unrealistic expectations of how long it takes to scale a business, and especially when you're new, or you haven't done a business at like $50 million scale, or like $5 million per month, or $3 million per month. uh, you will think, especially looking at Instagram, Twitter, that it takes 3 months to scale a business to 1 million a month or be profitable or, whatever, right? And whatever your expectations are, especially when you're starting, divide it by 10, be patient. And a lot of times, it was also the case here with my brother. I was always telling him, just stay focused. You don't need to launch in another country. You don't need to, focus on a different product. Just focus on this one. If you're breaking even with just one channel, no backend, that means you are sitting on a gold mine. You just need to optimize it. So keep optimizing. At the end of the year, all these optimizations will compound and you'll be profitable. You'll be able to take profits from the company, but it just takes time. And it's, again, going back to like the operator kind of, way of running things. It's just all about optimizing, stacking the improvements. And this is where the profits are, because when you're throwing just like cold traffic at an offer without any backend, it's really difficult to be profitable these days. You need the proper optimization, and there's a lot of big levers that you can pull to squeeze it out of your brand.
Really quick, if you currently have a similar brand to Merex, which is doing multiple $1 million per month, and you want to understand how to scale faster and way more profitably and essentially make more money from the traffic that you already have, then just click on the link down below this video. Just fill in your information, fill in your URL and the KPIs, and then you and I are going to get on a call together and break down your current funnel, and I will literally just show you where your biggest leverage opportunities are, right? And then if you're a great fit, I will then proceed to make you an offer, and then we can decide whether or not we should work together, right? So just click on that link down below this video. I think this also takes me a bit into the next section. Most of the people watching, they go crazy about like the marketing, the funnels, the offers. So take me through that. I think from what I'm seeing, what we've had on this interview and also the calls that we had, it's almost like you approach everything very simple. And simple is maybe the wrong word, but rather like first principle driven. So what is your main philosophy of you spend so much of your money on ads, like 6 to 7 figures every single month? What does that look like in practice? How do you think about creators? How do you think about a good product? Like, what's your philosophy around paid acquisition?
Mm-hmm. I always think, how can I make worse ads and still maintain profitability and still keep scaling? Because when I look at ads, when I look at the entire creative engine, I just see it as like one big inefficiency. You have to keep innovating. You have to, there's no predictability to it. So a good offer, a simple offer that makes sense and people can instantly grasp, because any kind of confusion, any kind of, question mark is usually going to be a drop off. So I just approach it from a standpoint of creating an offer that allows you to be inefficient at the front end, meaning marketing, have lower hit rate. I'm always thinking of optimizing the backend so that we can make more mistakes when it comes to ads, so we can actually justify the trial and error, because that's the most inefficient play in ecom. And actually, I want to switch our brand and from relying so heavily on just this crazy innovation, especially with our product, doesn't solve a problem. No real competitors. Nobody wants to enter the niche. And it's crazy hard to advertise against like unaware audiences. So we have to just, really pull our hair just to make it work. So in our case, the offer is really, the simplicity of the offer is everything.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Because I have so many people, they just over obsess with marketing, and then they don't, and then maybe they think about the offer, but then they don't think about like the whole post-purchase upsells, backend strategy and everything to make it work. What I think is interesting with you too is that a lot of people that I talk to, they are just sending all of their traffic to a product page. With you, like the first time we talked, you already had different list tickets and everything. How do you think bigger picture about the funnel and about the like mix, let's say, of ad spend, where you send a certain percentage of your ad spend directly to a product page, you have a lot of traffic going to listicle? How do you view the funnel high level?
Mm-hmm. It really depends on the product, on the offer, on the problem or no problem, on even the price point. The higher the price point, the harder the concept is to grasp, the more you're going to need to educate people. The more competitive the niche, the more education will be required. Let's say $50 gadget will definitely not require that, so you don't need listicles for this. If you're running a product at an AOV above $100 in a competitive market, you need to really emphasize your mechanism and how you're unique. You also need to understand what is your consideration period, how long people spend before they want to buy your product. So the listicle might not directly convert, but it's also really important to measure how does it improve the overall education process, and the listicle just being in the ad spend mix, does it actually lift the conversion rate? Because in our case, sometimes the listicles don't directly contribute to direct conversions, but we need approximately 5 to 7 touch points just because of the price point, just because the product doesn't really solve a problem, and it's more of like a seasonal play here. It oftentimes becomes one of the touch points, and when we remove it, we see a dip in conversion as well.
Very interesting. And how did you figure that out? Of like, you have different touch points that you need, and I do have this with another brand right now where also we send a lot of traffic to Listicle, and then it's like super difficult to directly attribute sales to it. But then in the overall mix, it makes a lot of sense. So how did you figure that out in the overall strategy?
Mm-hmm. Split testing against multiple different pages, multiple different ads, tailoring those listicles to some of the evergreen ads that every ad account has them. So middle of funnel, or if you crack a proper winner, you can test it with a listicle that is tailored to it. This should work right off the bat. Having attribution tools where you can track directly the user journey, that is very important. And also just kind of like gut feel kind of thing. Like, for example, when we're running a lot of tests, a lot of the data is difficult to attribute. So letting it run for a while, like for example, the split tests where usually you don't get proper results even for like the first week or two when the touch points are still in the funnel. So we need to let them run out and run a proper isolation. So in I'm kind of going back to like the pricing test that we're talking about here.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's also a really interesting topic, and also one thing where like I'm always interested to hearing your perspective on this, right? Because obviously like we do zero all day long. We run hundreds of split tests per month. With you, the first time that we spoke, I think that was around July, August last year, you were already doing like super significant numbers, like 2 to 3 million a month. What made you initially decide to say, okay, well, I'm in a position where I need to start doing CRO and like run a lot of split tests?
I think it was still a little bit too late for us. We should have done this earlier because I come from like a very simple framework. So if we work together and with CRO, a very simple win can really justify the retainer. So like it's very 0-1. Can we make more money than we pay for the whole operation to run? I mean the operation. I mean like the CRO here, right? And at this scale, it's very easy to find a win that can get you give you like an annual bump of like 50K, 20K, 100K, 200K, and these wins stack up, and definitely at scale it's really invaluable, and it also gives you a lot of insights into how your customers behave, into what do they want to see. By the tests that have won or failed, you can also form like ad hypothesis. You can also think about a new offer, maybe based on off of an experiment that won or lost. A lot of times my personal assumptions were wrong. I thought I knew a lot about our audience, but then we've disproved probably 70% of my assumptions through testing. And I definitely came from like a very biased place of like know it all, and thinking that I know my customers better. I didn't. And what is winning is a lot of times the simplicity of things, the basic education, not overcomplicating things. A lot of times people want to put together like very sophisticated offers and very sophisticated, user journeys. A lot of times that might not be necessary, and there's no other way to find out.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I mean, we had this on one of the calls too, in terms of biases and in terms of like the founder typically thinks
Yeah.
they know everything. I mean, it's the same for me. Like, there's so many split tests, offers, whatever that I come up with where I'm like, I invested a lot of time into it, a lot of research, and I think this is going to really outperform everything, and it just doesn't work, which like always shows how interesting or like how important it is to just set up a split test and then let the market decide and almost like detach yourself from it, right? Like, even if you're the founder. One thing maybe, because you already mentioned that you should have started a bit earlier with CRO, and I have this conversation all of the time. Sometimes I talk to founders and then they come to me and they're like, hey Carl, whatever, like I tried some stuff myself, I set up some tests myself, I switched some stuff, I saw this on Twitter, I tried to do it, and now I'm ready to work together. Like, what was your decision-making process maybe around that summer before we initially started working together, where you were like, okay, first of all, I want to outsource this to an external partner, and then secondly, what made you think that we were the right partner for this?
Yeah, the coolest thing that you guys have is that you have your custom tool that you just plug into our funnel, and we can see the exact metrics properly broken down. I've worked with CRO freelancers before, and the attribution usually, and like the data side of things usually was a problem. Also, just to stack up the learnings, you need to keep learning from them, and you need to document them, and you need proper clean data. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere, and you need to keep the tests running for a significant amount of time. I think when you're past that, let's say 500K per month mark, it really pays off to run a couple tests a month. It can really stack up at the end of the year, and that could be one of the levers to get you past the plateau, which a lot of people are hitting at that 500K per mark. At least that's what I hear.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the way that I think back at our first call, it was almost like 10 minutes or something. We jumped on a call and you were like, okay, let's work together. And I'm like, okay, this is how we work. And you were like, okay, let's do it. Was there anything beforehand where you were like thinking about it, or were you thinking like, okay, I'm gonna talk to Carl? Like, what led to that initial decision?
I know you know your stuff. We talked a couple times. We had a couple touch points before. We knew each other from different masterminds. I asked for advice. I got really good advice from you a couple times on multiple different occasions. So it made me feel confident that you guys are the right people to trust here. And this is really important because there's a lot of agencies I worked with some before in the past that were just like a glorified version of me running kind of throw shit against the wall experiments. Here, you guys are like, I can see that German approach. You guys are very organized and structured, and clean data, structured tests. This is what compounds, because you're not able to derive learnings from random experiments that you run for 3 days, and it was your gut feel. I thought so before, but I've seen on multiple occasions again when we were running tests that one test could just like skyrocket, show you the wrong data for the first week just because you have a lot of warm traffic. There was a gifting holiday, there was whatever, I don't know, you hit a winner on Facebook that contributed to this, and this would have performed anyway, and you attribute all of these wins to like a random event. So I think that this was like the most important thing that I've learned, and the software that you have is pretty cool. It's very nice.
Appreciate the kind words. And this again is a pattern that I see all of the time. It was the same with like IMA with the founder Danny. Like we did one call, and on that call he was like, okay, seems like you know your stuff, let's do it. And now it's like 16 months later. So that's also one thing that I do see as like a pattern and successful entrepreneurs, where they are just super straightforward and super quick in terms of making good decisions and sticking to it. So I really appreciate the kind feedback.
Yeah, also very important thing also wanted to add is that I always treat it as like a really good signal when I can reach the founder personally. Obviously you have a team, we still have touch points, and we still talk from time to time, and this is like a really important thing.
Yeah, appreciate it. I mean, it's again, I don't want to jump too deep into the test. Maybe we can talk about some of these, like for example, the pricing one, also some of the backend stuff that we're working on now. I don't know how much you are able to share here without giving the product or brand away. But that was also interesting for me. So for example, let's say the pricing test. I think that's something that's like really generic that we can talk about. It was really interesting because I think we launched it around a month ago, for example. And then the initial data was like really weird. And then I think we decided to like end it, I think after 2 days or something. And then you and I, we had like a high level call. And then we were looking at the data again and we cleaned it a bit. And then it seemed super promising. And now we're redoing the test. And now it seems to be positive on the first 1.5 weeks. Again, like we're going to let it run for longer. But maybe take us a bit into that. Are there some of the tests that you can share that were really exciting, or like some of the stuff that really opened your eyes that maybe some of the people in the audience can take away?
Mm-hmm. A lot of the tests that I thought would work didn't. And a lot of the big levers, fancy stuff, images, selectors, kind of like UX stuff that I thought would work, like adding different snippets or whatnot, all of them failed or were just neutral. And a lot of just basic stuff that even your team came up with around just like regular education, like nothing fancy, just adding a little bit of text here or there, or removing different sections just to remove friction, worked really well. I was pretty attached to like the way things were built, but these were the biggest levers that we've discovered. And on top of that, the pricing test, again, that was something that seemed strange. And again, I would definitely encourage everybody to keep their tests running for much longer. And at the same time, okay, I thought I lost you. And at the same time, just really don't trust the data initially. That data is going to lie to you for like the first week or two, and you'll see statistical significance on your gem pages after day 2 if you're running a lot of traffic, but it's not significant. Again, that can be significant for the random event that you're measuring against, and you need to test it against like multiple buying cycles. Let's say, average person needs 5 touch points, and that's going to be like 10 days for them to purchase our product, let's say. The ideal window would be to run a test for a month, a significant test like, let's say, pricing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there were 2 main things, right? So number one, kind of detaching yourself from it and being non-emotional, and then just seeing what the market feedback looks like. And then secondly, and I see a lot of people making this mistake, they just don't wait for enough data, whether that's on testing creatives or whether that's on testing something on your funnel. They just see 1 to 3 days of data, and then they're like, ADHD, let's switch, it looks good, right?
Yeah, but the problem is also that a lot of the testing tools, like the A/B testing tools, show you the statistical significance like pretty early, just based off of traffic, and they calculate it based off of traffic. Like they don't take into account like what day of the year is this, what creatives have you launched, how many creatives have you launched, have you scaled budgets recently, how many people were in your funnel, did you downscale? Because if you downscale, you're going to have more warm traffic in your funnel versus cold traffic. Like there's so many variables that it's just really better to keep your test running for a long time.
Yeah, 100%. Um, can we talk about the whole backend post-purchase upsell stuff?
Let's go.
Okay, sweet then. I promise to keep it high level, but I think this is just really, really exciting, and we can talk about this on the meta level, I think. Um, I've been pushing super hard, I think since November or December, to go into a really, really strong post-purchase upsell sequence, and I think we're like really, really closely to finally launching that. Maybe we can talk a bit about this in terms of we do have one product on the front end, and now we are basically setting up a post-purchase upsell sequence with 3, 4, 5 upsells to not only increase the average order value, but also to get a lot of people into subscription. Maybe first you can talk a bit about the bigger picture strategy of that. And then two, again, without going too much into details, also talk about the customer lifetime value and subscription part and the impact that we think it's going to have on the business.
Mm-hmm. So the bigger picture is that ad costs are rising, especially in the US year over year. So there's like a CPM inflation. When I was starting in the US, our cost per click was like significantly under $1. Now I think we're looking at something, this is like an industry standard, like $2-ish, $3. That's probably what you have to pay for a click, and it's only going to go up. So I think that post-purchase sequences with subscriptions, and definitely I've seen a lot of funnels like, t-shirt and people would implement a subscription just to be like in the VIP club. Definitely a short-term play that needs to make sense, but that's up to anybody's discretion. However, you need to always constantly think how to strengthen your offer so that you can keep spending more while retaining, while extracting. Maybe extracting is not the best word, but I don't have a better one. So extracting more value out of like current people in your funnel while they're there. And especially post-purchase is so important because people have already committed to your brand, to your product, and they are way more willing to trust you again if it makes sense. So again, I wouldn't really preach post-purchase for the post-purchase sake. I think there's like a really fine balance between customer satisfaction, and that's also going back to first principles. If you're optimizing for longevity, you need to have a good product, good customer experience, and everything downstream starts working for you. If you have a good product, you don't need 20 customer support reps. You can get away with 3 and have customers who are willing to return. However, post-purchase is really like essential these days, especially in competitive markets like US, to enable scale. That's like email marketing almost right now.
Yeah, very interesting. And what do you think about, I would say, a mixture of physical digital products, right? Front end physical, back end mixture of like physical digital products. Also thinking about the whole subscription side of things. Like, what do you think? Like, it's not only pushing things down the throat of the customer, but like actually makes sense and delivers value for them. So somebody in the audience and they are now thinking about post-purchase upsells, like what can they take away? Like how should they think about it? About like what maybe physical or digital products they can use in that sequence.
It definitely needs to make sense because then you're just creating problems for yourself. So if you're selling a t-shirt because you're just lazy, because you didn't want to look for a different product that actually would make a subscription make sense, then you're going to have a lot of problems. Backend, payment processor, chargebacks. You can't run a brand shop offer like this for a long time. You have to, you create hoops for you to jump through. So again, that's not simplicity. That's just like delaying complexity into time and just like, short-term borrowing against like future problems. So it needs to make sense. Let's say you sell a physical product, woodworking kit. That by default creates a problem. You can solve it in the backend. So there's a lot of physical products that you can incorporate subscription to, but it just has to be straightforward. it doesn't have to raise an eyebrow if like a person is watching your post-purchase VSL and they're thinking like, what the hell am I being pitched? That sale is so much harder than something as straightforward as you're buying a product that you already had doubts how to use before, and then you're being presented a post-purchase offer that completely evaporates this doubt. So there's definitely a ton of physical products that can be run with subscription products, also with digital only products, and there's a bunch of offers that do it.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think just looking at the time a bit, and because you already gave a lot of value, I think we can just move a bit into the closing section of this interview. So I do have some hot takes, so this can be super straightforward. And then I just want you to get a quick understanding of like your next couple of years. So just like the 2-3 main things that I always like to ask is, number one, how do you think about AI currently? Like, what about is real leverage for you, and what is like just hype, basically?
Yeah, I think most of it is hype. Probably 90% of what we see. A lot of people try to use AI wrong, or maybe just our approach isn't as sophisticated, but we've put a lot of resources into making AI work, and that's kind of still going uphill, because AI is good as like a synthesizing layer, but won't fix your data, won't attribute your data properly just by itself. You need like proper data warehousing, you need like proper scripts that will determine how this data behaves. What is still good is video, image, and kind of basic thought wrestling. Maybe with AI, I would say these are like at least the top 3 use cases that we're using. Chatbots for the team, onboarding chatbots, connecting AI to like all of your sources of knowledge and like synthesizing this. It's also been helpful. However, I think that AI agents, or people who do work, bots that do work for you, still we're still a little bit far from that. Maybe a year, maybe 2, who knows? But I think hype.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting take. For you and the brand, what's the main thing that you are focusing on, let's say, in the next 12 to 24 months?
I'm just really focusing on profitability and on building like a very resilient brand. So properly molded with design patents, trademarks, profitability, strong P&L, and strong backend, because that's how you build resilience. So my end goal is going to be relying on paid ads as little as possible, and this is where you get like proper valuation for your brand, proper leverage when you're no longer at the mercy of like one ad platform. So I think this is like a really typical arc for like any brand reaching like 3 to 5 level mark. Not wanting to like rely on paid acquisition as much.
Yeah, 100%. And just to round this up, if somebody's listening to this and you could only give them one thing, what should be the main takeaway from the last hour of all of the gold nuggets that we shared?
Yeah, so I would divide it into 2 segments. So let's say beginners and current operators. So beginners, just stick to it and stick to it for a while. I think drop shipping definitely has a place. There are successful drop shippers for sure, but just stick to it. So this is the advice I've given to a lot of people already. And the second one is focus on the back end, because there's a lot of inefficiency there. You might attribute a lot of let's say failed solutions, for the lack of better phrasing, to the product, to the offer. But if you don't have your email marketing properly set up at like, let's say 20+% of your revenue, if you don't have any additional channels like Amazon, if your chargeback rate is through the roof, if you're bleeding money in supply chain, if you're overpaying for COGS or shipping, from let's say China. These are very easy levers to pull, and you pull them once, and they keep paying you all the time. So I think backend and just kind of sticking to it.
Very cool. Well, man, this has been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
If people are listening to this, whether that's e-com operators, whether that's marketers, where can they best connect with you?
They can find me on X, so I guess we'll put the contact in the description. So feel free to reach out. I'm always on the lookout for top level marketers and operators. DM me. If you're a beast, we'll make it work.
Nice. Sounds good. Then I will make sure to put the X and then also LinkedIn into the description so people can reach out to you directly. Again, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. And then see you soon.
Amazing. Appreciate you, Carl. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, then just click here to watch another really great interview that I did with another 8-figure brand owner where we shared a lot of gold nuggets, right? So just click here for the next video to get some more great information about scaling e-commerce brands.